that, and then spend time with Sangattv Singh and kind of understand. In fact, Sangattv Singh told me that Yogi Bhajan told him send all the newspapers, get all the newspapers and send them back to him, and then make notes about what he found there. So he was kind of acting like a
intelligence gatherer.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then when Sangattv Singh came back to the United States, he told me that when Yogi Bhajan told him, he said, "Well, I sent you there to give me information, and then he left 3HO, for that." So it kind of, I think Yogi Bhajan's plan kind of backfired on him.
Wow.
Yeah, turns out that way.
So you've been trying to get into the military. It didn't work. You've been to India. You've met one of the most charismatic, what has been regarded by the Sikh community at the turn of the millennium as the GurSikh of the millennium. You then encountered problems in India.
Sorry?
You then encountered problems.
Oh, I encountered problems in India.
Yeah. With regard to marriage bureaus, your own personal wish to marry a Punjabi person, so that you could then consider yourself more aligned with Punjab than you would be with your own environment, which is Western Europe, or Western Northern American. How did that happen, and why did that happen?
Well, all I can say is that I think it was really by the grace of Waheguru. That's all I can really say, because I certainly didn't plan it.
Yeah.
It was completely up to the grace of Waheguru, and I just really so thankful to Waheguru to leading me in the direction of understanding what true Sikhs are like and what true Sikhi is like. I was completely into the Yogi Bhajan 3HO cult, I call it, and then this was all through the 80s and 90s. I was involved in business, and I have to admit, I was involved in some pretty shady kind of business stuff that Yogi Bhajan has got us into. With him, it was all about making money, all right? And we justified it as being a way to support the 3HO organization to get it. And if you know anything about Yogi Bhajan, he just lived a lavish lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
We went out to Beverly Hills restaurants every day. I was on security, and I had an art gallery then too. So I had my own business, so I could do the security on the side. And we went to Beverly Hills every day, and spent $2,000 on lunch every day. So I was totally into that. I was following him religiously, because I thought he was, real. We call him a spiritual teacher, and he was really like a guru and really like a cult personality is what it really was. But anyway, so I was totally into that, and I did everything he said. Everything. He told me, different points to give him cash, big amounts of cash, and he said it was for the refugees in India, but I have no way of knowing if he actually gave these thousands of dollars that I gave him in cash to that. But anyway, I would just do it, because the whole thing in 3HO was doing what your teacher, Yogi Bhajan, told you.
Selfless.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I was really dedicated to that. And then in the 90s, I moved to New Mexico from Los Angeles. And again, I was in the business. And
was that to be closer to Yogi Bhajan?
Yeah, he was spending more time in New Mexico.
HO.
He was spending more time in New Mexico. And I was also getting tired of the big city, Los Angeles, wanted to get into a little different area and things like that. And I'd had some really bad business ventures that I got into that went really bad. I had to eventually declare bankruptcy and kind of get out of Los Angeles. So anyway, so I went to New Mexico, and there I was into real estate, and then I started getting into some confrontations with Yogi Bhajan, and started to understand that he was really pretty, I would call it greedy and corrupt on different business things. Anyway, I described a lot of this in my book that I wrote. You mentioned that you were part of the book, Confessions of an American Sikh. But for all those who would like to know more of the details, you can read all that. But just to summarize, I started to understand and started to confront Yogi Bhajan, and
you started to suspect that he was.
Yeah, I started to try to see that he was really after money and control more than anything. And so I didn't have any indication of his being teachings against Sikh at that point. It was more about just that he was on the corrupt end and kind of would tell lies and frauds.
Up to this point, had your only interaction with Sikhs other than 3HO Sikhs been the few weeks that you spent at Amritsar?
The only other time would be when dignitaries from India would come and or Ragis would come.
Yeah. But they would come to 3HO.
They come to 3HO.
You would still remain within that environment.
Right. But I think there's a very good story that I'll just tell real quickly, how Yogi Bhajan wanted us to stay away from the Sikhs from the Punjab. There was a group of Ragis who came to Los Angeles, and Yogi Bhajan told me to take them to Disneyland and Universal Studios and things like that. I did a lot of this where I took Sikhs around. So the Ragis wanted to go to the Gurdwaras, and there was a few Gurdwaras in Los Angeles that were usually in people's homes and things like that. During the 80s, there weren't too many big Gurdwaras, so they wanted to visit some of those. So I said, okay, we'll just do that. We won't go to Disneyland. So I got back and I told Yogi Bhajan, I said, sir, I took the Ragis to the Gurdwaras, thinking that he would say great. But he chewed me out, and I just couldn't understand it. He said, I told you to take them to Disneyland. I told you to do this with them and things like that. And I didn't really think about it at the time, but afterwards, now that I reflect on it, he wanted us to really just stay away from the
create isolation.
The Sikh, to insulate us from being part of the Sikh community like that. And he was Yogi Bhajan. He would just get furious about things if you didn't do exactly what he told you to do. And many people accuse me of saying, well, going along with this, like that. You have to understand, this guy had very, very imposing personality. First of all, he was huge. I mean, he was 6 feet, 6'4", I think. He was a really big guy. And then, I was half his age, so it's not really like you can tell him to do anything. If you try to criticize or try to say anything, he just blasts you, So.
But you were there 30 years.
Yeah, 30 years, that's right.
As a 3HO disciple, you say that he didn't like to be called, you were teachers in training.
Yeah.
If I remember the term correctly.
Right.
So none of you were disciples, you were teachers in training. You were there 30 years. But you're so adamant that this is definitely the wrong thing.
Yeah. I have to say that I definitely went along with it probably too long, but the only thing I can say is that
how long do you think you were there before you genuinely knew that this isn't for me? What I'm suggesting is that, not that I'm saying it's anywhere near equal or even comparable, but in a relationship that involves domestic abuse,
right?
Somebody that knows that they're being abused, knows that this isn't the environment for them, may well take longer than could be understood. To remove themselves from that environment. Somebody who's feeling vulnerable, like you would have been feeling vulnerable, I assume.
Right.
Wouldn't necessarily be able to leave if it is a cult, like you say, it's a cult.
Right.
Then I'm assuming that you wouldn't be able to just walk away because you wouldn't have that inner strength to say, I can stand up to you.
There was a very good book.
At what point, in 30 years, at what point did you realise, but were unable to move away?
It wasn't really until 2009 that I was able to really just completely, detach myself.
Oh, of course, yeah. No, but at what point did you understand that I no longer want part of this, but I'm going to have to maintain the facade because I'm not in a position to walk away?
It wasn't really until 2009.
Really?
Yeah.
The moment you realised, you walked away straight away.
There was a very good book that was written by, I don't remember the name of it. It was somebody who was in this Christian Science,
Scientology?
Scientology, that's what. Yeah,
Ron
yeah.
Hubbard?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, but he was part of that group, and he describes it very well. That you get friends, family, your businesses are tied up with all the people that are in the group.
Absolutely.
And it's just easier to go along with things like that. And so I had become in a situation where later in this late 2008, 2009 period, where I just didn't have anything to lose at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
My previous wife and I had divorced in 2007, and I was in India, so I didn't have really any connection with 3HO like that. And all the, pretty much the business things that I had gone were falling, was falling apart, things like that. So I really didn't have anything that was keeping me clung to them like that anymore, So the final straw for me was when I read this book, Sikhism and Tantric Yoga by Dr. Trilochan Singh.
Trilochan Singh,
yeah, who spent months with Yogi Bhajan in the 70s. 1977 is when he published this book. And so I discovered this book in India, and started talking to Sikhs about what Dr. Trilochan Singh was saying in the book. And it really started to make sense. It was a real eye-opener.
It was like an expose.
Yeah.
And very early on as well.
Yeah, yeah. And, I found one of the very last copies of the book, that was available. I found part of it when I was in India, and then I found the whole rest of it when I got back to the United States. And it was just a complete eye-opener to me about the doctrinal differences between what Yogi Bhajan was teaching and what Sikhi was really about. That's what really struck me. All the stuff about Yogi Bhajan's frauds and all that kind of stuff, I guess some could say, he did it in the interest of making money in order to promote his his organization, and there was accusations against him for rape and abuse of his things and everything, and all that, maybe you could actually live with and say that he was an imperfect person, but the doctrinal differences, the idea that he was teaching us things that were completely against Sikhi. This Shiv Shakti worship, these meditations that he would give out, that are in worship of Shiva and these purely Hindu philosophies. Okay, that is what really opened my eyes to the truth about what he was teaching, and that I'd been following something that was completely, really against Sikhi.
When you say that. Are there members in the 3HO today who feel the same way? Because they are very, very defensive about their own beliefs. Yeah. They do say that we are Sikhs and that Kundalini Yoga or the actual beliefs in certain forms of idol worship that they say are compatible with Sikhism.
Yeah. Well, there's a term in psychology, I think, that really describes it well. It's called cognitive dissonance, where somebody, you get so invested in something. You spent, 30, 40 years of your life with something. And you,
emotional investment.
Yeah, emotional investment. You get your family involved with it. You've got maybe kids that are part of the religion and everything, this group and everything. How do you just pick up and say, well, it's just all been a lie, the whole thing? It's very difficult to do. And I ran into this. My eyes were open when I read this book. I spent weeks where I took a text editor and I went through and I copied Dr. Trilochan Singh's book and put it on the internet. Oh. And I made a PDF of the book so that I could send it to all my friends in 3HO. And I thought, gee, when they read this thing, they're gonna say, wow, they're gonna agree with me. But they didn't.
Did any of them?
No, none of them. Absolutely zero. It's just amazing to me how.
This is after Yogi Bhajan's passing, yeah?
Yes, this was in 2009, 2010.
Yeah. So you see the hold where people from outside of 3HO have always assumed that this very charismatic, very powerful speaker, very physically astute man,
Mm-hmm.
has a hold or particular ideological
Yeah.
sort of grab amongst his
Yeah.
followers, he's no longer there.
Yeah, yeah. It's you know, they believe that Yogi Bhajan to them is more powerful in death than he was when he was alive. They have this mental idea, whether true or not, that Yogi Bhajan will be there when they die. They've mentioned many times in their statements in 3HO that Yogi Bhajan will be there when they make this journey in the afterlife and things like that, and that Yogi Bhajan is more powerful dead than alive. Okay, they believe that, and there's a lot of this, you know, occult practices that goes on within 3HO. This tantric yoga they do, where Yogi Bhajan is seen as this, you know, occult master that has power over them in 3HO. And I have to say, it took me this experience in India, which was a completely like a kick in the butt, I guess I should say, where it just really woke me up. And I really, again, have to thank Waigu for getting me out of this grasp of this cult. It's can't be described as anything else but a cult, really. And I think this tantric yoga that Yogi Bhajan taught, and he actively had people line up, and he would sit up at the top of the pedestal, you know, and look out at people and have them meditate, you know, on him and on these exercises and things like that. That it could be said that he has them under kind of this hypnotic spell.
Yeah, like choreographed rituals.
Yeah, it was completely like that, you know. And if you talk to the people, like you said, if you try to discuss with them and try to reveal to them about these different practices, being against Sikhi, they're very defensive, and they most of the time they won't talk to you in person. And if you try to confront them on the internet, then they'll block you or they'll censor you. It seems like if their way was so truthful that they'd be open to discussing anything with anybody. You know what I mean? What do they have to hide?
Well,
you know, if that's what the
could it be said that they were, and that when they are open and they are forthcoming with their opinions, because their opinions are not accepted and re-questioned and the questions are redoubled, that they've just decided to bring the shutters down and say, regardless of what we say, these people are not going to accept us.
Yeah, they have taken on the strategy, I think, now at this point, of just completely blocking anything that criticisms that other Sikhs have. That's pretty much their main strategy.
Just insulated themselves from outside.
Yeah, it's not that. But with the internet now and the openness that we have with media and all that kind of thing, people are going to see the truth eventually. I mean, their group is getting smaller and smaller. You know, I think that they had a recent election where they elected some people to their leadership council. And there's only 400 people that are really kind of the core of these, what they call these Yogi Bhajan priests or ministers that are actually voting for these leaders. Okay, so their numbers are very, very small.
Would you say there's a cell structure?
Oh yeah, they have a definite structure.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, they have a definite structure, and the danger I see to Sikhi is that they have an enormous amount of money. Really, these businesses are worth billions of dollars. They have this Yogi Tea, and then there's also this Call Security. That Call Security has $1 billion in contracts from the U.S. government, Marshal Services. Okay, it's kind of scary to think that a cult runs those securities for all the courthouses in the United States. They run all the courthouse securities. Anyway, so they have a lot of money. They have a lot of expertise in marketing. Okay, you can see it in SeekNet and these other Kundalini organizations that they run, and that's 3HO organization. They're very, very intelligent marketers. All right, and of course their English is native to their upbringing. Yeah. So they have that huge advantage, you know, to Sikhs that come from India. yes, their English is pretty good, but it's not to the skill of